responsible outsourcing, fair wages and worker safety, offshoring and outsourcing. Offshoring and outsourcing are common practices among businesses to reduce costs and increase profits. Offshoring involves moving business operations to another country, while outsourcing involves hiring another company to perform certain business functions. While these practices can bring benefits, such as higher standards of living for the workers in those countries to whom jobs are offshored or outsourced, they also raise ethical issues related to labor practices, human rights, and environmental impact. One of the main ethical issues with offshoring and outsourcing is the potential for exploitation of workers in countries with weaker labor protection. Companies may outsource to countries where wages are lower and labor protections are less strict, which can lead to poor working conditions, low pay, and other forms of exploitation. This can be particularly problematic in industries such as manufacturing and garment production. In addition, offshoring and outsourcing can raise concerns related to human rights, particularly in countries with poor human rights records. Companies may be indirectly supporting regimes that engage in human rights abuses or fail to uphold international labor standards. This can lead to reputational damage and negative public perception. Offshoring and outsourcing can also have negative environmental impacts. Companies may outsource to countries with weaker environmental regulations, leading to increased pollution and environmental degradation. This can harm local communities and ecosystems and contribute to global climate change. To address these ethical issues, companies must take a responsible and ethical approach to offshoring and outsourcing. This may involve implementing codes of conduct and policies that require suppliers and partners to uphold labor and environmental standards and conducting regular audits to ensure compliance. Business downsides of offshoring and outsourcing. Offshoring can bring several business-related downsides as well. Transportation costs. Offshoring requires transporting goods and services across long distances, which can be expensive and may increase the carbon footprint of the company. Transportation costs can eat into the cost savings achieved through offshoring, particularly if the company is not located near major shipping ports or transportation infrastructure. Environmental impact. Offshoring can also have negative environmental impacts, particularly if the company is sourcing products or materials from countries with lax environmental regulations. The transportation of goods and services also contributes to carbon emissions and air pollution, which can harm local communities and ecosystems. Poor worker conditions. Offshoring can also contribute to poor working conditions in countries with weaker labor protections. Companies may outsource to countries where wages are lower and labor protections are less strict, which can lead to poor working conditions, low pay, and other forms of exploitation. This can be particularly problematic in industries such as manufacturing and garment production. Quality control. Offshoring can also make it more difficult for companies to maintain quality control over their products and services. This can lead to issues such as defective products, delays in delivery, and customer dissatisfaction. In fact, some countries are bringing jobs back to their original home countries, a practice known as reshoring, because of poor quality of work accomplished by outsourced jobs. Cultural and linguistic barriers. Offshoring can also create cultural and linguistic barriers that may make it difficult for companies to communicate effectively with their suppliers and partners. This can lead to misunderstandings, delays, and other challenges that can affect the quality and timeliness of production. Apple in China. The disturbing cases of Apple in China and the garment industry in Bangladesh highlight the ethical issues related to labor practices in global supply chains. These cases raise important questions about the responsibilities of companies to ensure the safety and well-being of workers in their supply chains. as well as the role of governments and civil society in promoting ethical and sustainable business practices. Apple offshores its manufacturing to China mainly because China has a strong electronics supply chain. Still, concerns have been raised about the working conditions in Apple's supply chain, including reports of labor abuses, worker exploitation, and unsafe working conditions. Workers in Apple's supply chain have reported working long hours with low pay and, in some cases, under hazardous conditions. Apple has faced criticism for failing to ensure that its suppliers uphold labor standards and for prioritizing cost savings over worker safety and well-being. Garment industry in Bangladesh. Similarly, the garment industry in Bangladesh has faced significant criticism for the poor working conditions and safety hazards that workers face. In 2013, a building housing several garment factories in Dhaka collapsed, killing more than 1,100 workers and injuring thousands more. The tragedy highlighted the risks of inadequate safety standards and the urgent need for greater accountability in the garment industry. These cases highlight the need for greater transparency and accountability in global supply chains, as well as the importance of ethical and sustainable business practices. Companies must take a proactive approach to monitoring their supply chains, ensuring that workers are treated fairly and that working conditions are safe and healthy. This may involve implementing codes of conduct and policies that require suppliers and partners to uphold labor and environmental standards, conducting regular audits to ensure compliance, and providing training and resources to workers to ensure that they are aware of their rights and have the ability to report abuses. It may also involve working with local communities and stakeholders to understand and address their concerns and investing in programs that support sustainable development and human rights. Companies can also consider adopting ethical sourcing and sustainable supply chain practices to ensure that their operations do not contribute to negative social or environmental impact.